What up, tribe? It's your girl Raji, and I'd like to welcome you to my podcast, The Kush Concierge, something for the people, where the Evolved Hustler comes to learn more about hoodoo, tarot, culture, astrology, and a little bit of everything in between. So, today we are doing something a little different. We are starting off with Tribe Talk, and the next episode that I do will be the Hoodoo Almanac for the week ahead, and tapping into the energy of this. So let me just say, I just lit a saddlewood incense, and when I say it smells so good. I love incense. If y'all love me, like, you'll go on my wish list on Amazon and you send me incense by the pounds. I love them. I like them. I enjoy them. They smell so divine. And I like them all the time. This saddlewood smells so good, y'all. Okay. Ooh, it's oh my God. Yes. Okay. I know my elevated ancestors was Egyptian, because baby, I love, man, please. I love smells. I love oils. I love all things. It's giving all things goddess, ritual, oracles. It's very much always giving. Okay, don't get it twisted. But I'm tapping in, y'all. It's been a minute, and yesterday's podcast, I promised y'all I was gonna come through, and we was gonna discuss the Women Who Run with Wolves chapter, as well as this show that I'm watching called Preacher on Netflix. But it's originally coming from AMC Plus, but Netflix has picked up some episodes, or seasons rather. It's got 4 seasons on Netflix, and so I'm watching. I'm usually guided to things that I binge. If you know me, you know that I don't watch a lot of television. So when I do gain interest in something, it's usually for a purpose. I'm being guided to watch it, for a decode or a message that I'm supposed to convey. So here we are, watching Preacher on AMC Plus, Netflix, coded, and also The Artist's Way. So where have I fucking been, bro? Oh my gosh. July had me in her talons. And I will say this. When you are dealing with trickster energy, you have or Jinn type energy, trickster spirit, Mercury retrogrades. You cannot sleep on them at all. And it's not paranoia if it's a pattern recognition and you recognize the pattern. So don't let nobody try to trick you into feeling like your pattern recognition is a sense of paranoia, because that's the trick in itself. So in addition to trying to make sure I stayed on task with the Hoodoo Almanac and my normal life, I was very much engaged in a level of spiritual warfare that I take full responsibility for, because I don't even know how to put it. Actually I do. I was dealing with a trickster spirit, and I lowered my sword in a way that caused me to have to put all my energy into dominating and dealing with some situations. So I ain't gonna lie to you, it took me a month to read. I haven't drawn in a fucking month. I have not, I've been having to double up on my chapters in The Artist's Way, because I said, I let my sword down, and it caused me to have to put all of my energy into spiritually handling someone who felt like, because they were more dominant in the physical, that they would be able to fuck with me. And that's putting it mildly. But things are back in order, for lack of better words, and I'm back. And I've been reading, and I'm trying to get back on task. I'm trying to get back on my Zoom. But I do make sure I give y'all them Hoodoo Almanacs every day. Like, that's my job. Like, that's why one of my main purposes. So I try not to let that shit affect. And I feel like that's what that spirit wanted, like, on that person. I feel like that spirit wanted me to abandon posts. They wanted me to be like all down and out and just feeling like, oh, no help for the weary woman. And instead, I went to war. I just went to war, and I was angry because my energy was being disturbed. I had started out on this journey, but at the end of the day, I had to take accountability and realize that sometimes you just can't deal with people, period. Okay? Sometimes you be thinking you can dibble and dabble and you can play in between the worlds, and a motherfucker will show you every time that you simply cannot. They do not deserve the honor of being in your fucking presence, no matter what gifts and salutations that they bring. Sometimes that shit just what it is, a trap, a trick. And that's what it was. And yeah, I gave all of July hell and high water trying to regulate that issue that would have been, it could have ended another way, and it ended in my favor. And I feel like that was very much a wake-up call to me to put a period on that shit. Like, there's a period here. There's not a semicolon. There's not a new chapter. There's not well, maybe we can coexist like this or like that. No, nigga, it's a period on that shit. Like, close the fucking book. The end. Sayonara. Fin Mazel Tov. I wish you the day and the life you deserve. But ooh, God. And it took so much energy, y'all. So I'm back, though. That's the important part. I'm back on my squares here. So I have been, before we get into the Women Who Run with Wolves, let's get off into Preacher on Netflix. So Preacher on Netflix is a story about this guy who's like an assassin of sorts, or like a rehabbed criminal. And this guy's father was a preacher, and he had like maybe to settle a debt or whatever. I still haven't gotten to the backstory of the dad, like why, because I'm just on season 2 now. I just watched the first episode last night. So I said after I finish each season, I'm gonna come in and like tell y'all my thoughts. So Preacher, he's like, okay, he's in this country. He made his dad a promise that he would come back and like, oh my God, y'all, and run his church. So he's like a preacher, but he like gets drunk, and he's like a wayward preacher, if you will. And he's trying to fulfill like his dad's wishes, right? So what happens is he is gifted this team, this supreme power from the ethers. Like, it's called Genesis, right? And Genesis chooses its host, all right? And so it came down from the ethers, from heaven. And Genesis is this power to speak to people, almost mind control. And like, it's like this abomination, because Genesis is a energy that was born between like a angel and a demon. So the angel and the demon fell in love. This is the story they tell. The angel and the demon fell in love doing warfare. They made it in some type of way, and along came Genesis, right? So Genesis is this energy, this power that travels through time. So in the beginning of the show, the dude, it goes to like Africa to this preacher, right? And so the African preacher it inhabited was like a farce or whatever. He was like a fake. And so the opening scenes is like him preaching in his church in Africa, and he explodes into like smithereens, and his congregation's like, oh my God. So then Genesis leaves the body, and somehow, some way, Genesis gets to Jesse, who is the main character of this story. And like, he is a righteous man, while not necessarily the greatest. You know what I'm saying? He made his mistakes. He righteous. And he has balance. Like, this person is balancing their light and their dark. So Genesis can't be in nobody that's all dark, and can't be in nobody that's all light. Like, there has to be a healthy balance of the two. Jesse has this, like, he has it, right? Whatever Genesis is looking for, he has it. So Genesis is like, okay, you carry out the duty. And that's what he do. So basically, he don't always use it. Like, it's not always an overtaking, but when he do speak, like, he can command people to do stuff. He can stop things. He can, like, make shit happen. And he has, like, basically mind control over people. It's a really good show, because so these angels from heaven come down, and they trying to collect Genesis, because they consider Genesis an abomination, because it's the work of, you know, a demon and an angel coming together. Like, they like, oh, this never should have fucking happened. So the whole story is like based around him not supposed to have this power. He want to do good with it, right? And he's joined by Cassidy and Tulip, who are, Cassidy is a vampire. Tulip is like his partner in crime / lover. And like, Jesse goes through this process of learning about like why free will is important. And he's being constantly like hunted, because he has this gift in him, this power that they feel like, you know, he shouldn't fucking have or whatever. And they start off in like a small town. Like, this is the first season is this small town. Well, in the end, right, let me just make a long story short. In the end, Jesse calls down. He want to let everybody know, like, I can call down God. So he tries to call down God through this phone or whatever that the angels were using. And what happens is he discovers that God has abandoned post. And now the second season is him looking for God. Like, where are you? Why won't you help us? Et cetera, et cetera. Like, where are you, God? Type thing. Because Genesis is rivaling the powers that be, you know what I'm saying, for lack of better words, God consciousness. And it's a very interesting take on the ability to tap into your own power, the ability to tap into what would be, to me, balance, you know, recognizing your own power. But what's interesting is, like I said, the end, right? The town is at the church, and they recognize that God is not there. God is abandoned post. So they just say, fuck it. And they do what comes natural, which is mayhem and anarchy. And the whole fucking town blow up after Jesse, Cassidy, and Tulip dip to go find God. The whole town just blow the fuck up. Because the people realized they didn't have to have no moral standard, or so they thought. And they just went fucking crazy. So they kind of picking up on that in the second season, what happens to the town and like the other characters, etc. And Jesse, like I said, traveling across America looking for God and trying to get some answers. Like, what do we do? And then you got the angels that have sent this demon to kill Jesse, because they said he's not supposed to use this power. Like, just because you got it, you're not supposed to use it. The angels want him to give it up. But Jesse won't give it up, because he like, God gave me this power. Why would I give it up? Why would I not do this shit? So it's interesting. I love it. I didn't think that I would like it as much as I do. It's very eye-opening in a sense. Obviously, you know, you have metaphorical things. I wouldn't take things literally. I mean, in this day and age, man, who can you say? But it's very metaphorical. So if you can read between the lines and decode certain shit, you know, obviously you're on the up and up. Very much worth watching, though. Very much, because the people in the beginning, they didn't believe these things existed, and the shit started coming to life, and they like, oh shit. So it tackles a lot of different energies, but it ran for like 4 seasons. So season 1, in a nutshell, very good, worth checking out if you're into like spirituality, horror, and gore, because it is not light like that. It's very much a lot of moments where you be like, damn. So if you're into that type of thing, I definitely would recommend checking it out. Now, I just started the first episode of season 2, so I'll get back with y'all at the end of this season. I think it'd be like 9 or 10 episodes in the season, if I'm not mistaken. So let's tap into Women Who Run with Wolves. First of all, I had to do some major catch up with the Artist Way. I had to like squeeze almost like 2 or 3 weeks worth of work into like 1 or 2 weeks to catch up, because I definitely plan on being there for the end of harvest season. Like, I feel like that was the main goal. Like, I was set triggers to stop me, and I fell for it. Never underestimate your opponent. That's what I got from that. Anyway, so I'm on week like 9 today, getting back in touch. But the Artist Way, and I know I said Women Who Run with Wolves, but I'm going to tap into the Artist Way real quick for y'all, because I'm not going to go as in depth. You know, hey, I hope you're keeping up. I hope you had a better July than I did, and you keeping up. So week 7 was recovering a sense of connection to yourself and your creative endeavors. Week 6 was about tapping into what you are meant to do, your purpose, recovering a sense of abundance. And week 5, which is where we originally left off, was about discovering the sense of possibility, the idea that things could actually happen for us. So there are indications and lessons here about being confident and being provided for, and what you want to do in life, and trusting yourself, and stepping out of poverty mindset and poverty conscience. Also tapping into being more to being selfish in regards to your space and your boundaries, and being able to assume your creative self, like how we give our time away to family, friends, etc., and abandon like our artistic selves, like sabotaging our creative lives, or not feeling like, oh, I can do this and this will provide for me. You know, it's going to get into money soon. I believe in the next chapter, so it's going to get into like how we recognize and how we need to kind of decenter money in a way so we can get more creative. So yeah, being authentic, giving yourself the time to decide what's luxury to you, and luxury could be your time. It could be coloring, whatever. So, just allowing yourself to tap into. So there are different activities that obviously I'm catching up on. But to give y'all a sense of where I'm at, yeah, I definitely squeezed it in. I didn't care. When I say I'm finishing by the 21st, I mean that shit. I means that. Period, point blank. I'm not playing. Now, I tapped into chapter 6 with Women Who Run with Wolves, and I did highlight some things. So, finding one's pack, belonging as a blessing. And she was talking about the ugly duckling. And I forgot about the ugly duckling story. But if you remember, the ugly duckling is about where the duck would felt like he didn't belong, but the whole time he was a swan, and his egg had just got dropped like in a different place. And it kind of just goes into the idea that sometimes you can't avoid the strife and the refining that comes along with life, like how the family you're born into, the circumstances you're born into. And you might not feel like you belong. You might not feel like you are in the right place. And just like the ugly duckling, you were teased for being different. You were harassed. You were exiled. She talks about exile a lot. So she says, you may not belong to your original family at all. You may match your family genetically, but temperamentally, you may belong to another group of people. Or you may belong to your family functionally. I think I said that right. While your soul leaps out, runs down the road, and is gluttonously happy munching spiritual cookies somewhere else. So if you're on this journey with me, I also talk about the idea of like not feeling out of place. And in the past 5 years, just to keep it they were very much more vocal about it. When I stepped, I always was different, but when I stepped into the realm of spirituality, they were vocal about the fact that I didn't belong. Oh God, they were so fucking vocal. And almost to the point of like it being dangerous for me to deal with them on a personal level. Even now, like if that shit that happened this past month was about me being different and me doing things differently and people not understanding or not wanting to accept that I was okay with doing things differently, and they took it as a way to come down on me instead of just accepting I'm not a crowd creature. It can get dangerous when people get like that. It's very scary. And she says, it is what I call a psychological and spiritual root story. A root story is one that contains a truth so fundamental to human development that without integration of this fact, further progression is shaky, and one cannot entirely prosper psychologically until this point is realized. So here's the ugly duckling that I wrote as a literary story based on the eccentric version originally told in the Magyar language by the Fallacious Mesolek rustic tellers from my family. So she tells the story of the ugly duckling, which I kind of gave y'all like the rundown. And she even goes into the idea that the duckling had went into all these different spaces and places and didn't realize that, it was going to be seen by its true tribe as a swan. Like the swans recognized that the duckling was a swan, And she talks about how like the different phases of rejection and exile push this swan into its true beautiful self, into its true tribe. So she says, in the reflection of the water, this was the end of the story. In the reflection in the water, he saw a swan in full dress, snowy plumage, slow eyes and all. The ugly duckling did not at first recognize himself, for he looked just like the beautiful strangers, just like those he had admired from afar. And it turned out that he was one of them after all. He was a swan, a glorious swan. So, tapping into exile. And, a lot of people assimilate because they be afraid. And I feel like that it has a lot to do with like what I've been talking about. You've been following the Hoodoo Almanac with me for the past few weeks. We've been dealing a lot with like our relationships with past versions of ourselves and people around us, and how they are in direct opposition to us shifting and changing. So it's in the stars. And I also find it quite interesting that when I was done going through that bullshit ass situation, I feel like this chapter was right on time. Like it was like, boom, okay, now read this chapter. And I feel like it was like divine timing. But anyway, the problem of the exile one is primeval. 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 Anyway. It speaks of being the outcast, tortured by events outside of your venue, just people not accepting you and making you feel like you're not worthy of love or acceptance or being considered because you think differently or look differently. So it says sometimes exile is enforced through sheer meanness. Truth. Other times exile comes about as a result of naive error. So when she talks about it being mean, it's like the stepmother cast her stepdaughter away, like her and the sisters are just mean as fuck. Then it talks about naive error where the Greek god Hephaestus took his mother's hair aside in an argument with Zeus, and Zeus got mad and infuriated and like decided he wanted to banish his son. Sometimes exile comes from striking a bargain that you don't understand, so making a deal with the devil. So she says all the stories of exile contain the same nucleus of meaning. The duckling of the story is symbolic of the wild nature which, when pressed into circumstances of little nurture, instinctively strives to continue no matter what. So yeah, you might be, usually it turns you into like this this beast of a sort. It turns you into a new creature when you realize that you don't belong and you've been treated like this for a very long time. Like, I have been different for so long, and I feel like people who are just encountering me even over the last like 15 years or so, like, that bully shit don't work on me. I've been getting bullied all my life. I've been getting bullied by my family. Like, you know what I'm saying? I made friends with my bullies. I know y'all probably have heard me talk about that before, but I ended up being friends with a lot of my bullies, or lack of better words. I just, you can't beat them, join them. Like, fuck it. So the bully thing don't really work on me. And I feel like you do become immune. Almost. Like, I have no issues with being alone. I'm usually the one standing outside of the crowd like, fuck this shit, I'm not gonna do it like this. I have stood up against authority figures when I was in high school. If I didn't feel like some shit was right, I would speak up against it. I've never been like the go along to get along type of girl at all. So for the wildish woman, duration is one of her greatest strengths. Like, you hold on, you hold out, you keep going, and you find strength in adversity. So, she goes on to talk about the different types of exile, right? And the exile of the unmatched child. So, she says, she talks about the duckling. She says, he is not ugly in reality, but he does not match the others. He is so different that he looks like a black bean in a bushel of green peas. The mother duck at first tries to defend this duckling, whom she believes to be her offspring, but finally she is profoundly divided emotionally and withdraws from caring for the alien child. Oh gosh. In some parents' fantasy, whatever child they have will be perfect and will reflect only the parents' ways and means. If the child is wildish, she may unfortunately be subjected to her parents' attempts at psychic surgery over and over again, for they are trying to remake the child and more so trying to change what her soul requires of her. Through her soul wishes to speak its truth, she is pressured to be silent. Pressure to be adequate in whatever manner authority defines it can chase the child away or underground, or set her to wander for a long time looking for a place of nourishment and peace. Fucking truth. Like, I got a type of genetic family that if you don't do what the fuck they think that you should be doing, you are not embraced. I also went through the process last month of deleting probably about half of my genetic family from my social media. I deleted a lot of people off my social media last month. I got rid of so many fucking people. And it wasn't like a mad or a bitter thing. It was you don't belong here anymore. Like, we don't fit, we don't gel, we don't align. So there's no reason for you to be looking at me every day. through the eyes of criticism and passive aggressiveness and whatever. So a lot of people probably went looking for me, and they were blocked. They were blocked, they were deleted, they were exiled. As much as they felt like they was exiling me, I had exiled they motherfucking ass. And I did that. Like I said, I don't take shit like that lightly. Because I do believe in tribe. I do believe in community. But I believe in the right tribe, and I believe in the right community. And it was getting on my nerves that people was watching my stories and shit. And these would be my family members or lack thereof. And they wouldn't react. They would just be looking. And it felt very insidious. So I got rid of their ass. I was on a rampage in July. I was on a fucking rampage. I got rid of so many people. And it feels amazing. It feels amazing. But, my maternal figure would tell me, even when I got started in this shit and I had my first awakening, it was like she felt made it seem like she understood, but then she was afraid. But I feel like, just like the ugly duckling, she was more afraid for how she was gonna look than anybody else. So it was she wasn't really wanting me to practice or do certain things. And I feel like she just went along with the status quo, even though she sticks out like a fucking sore thumb herself. She puts on a good act, or at least she tries, and they still don't fucking accept her, which I guess it made her turn against me, because it was how dare you not give a fuck about acceptance? And I really don't. And that bothers them. My grandmother is I love her, but she's the redhead stepchild of the fucking crew. And she's very different, literally a redhead, very bright, very, ambitious, very adventurous, speaks her mind, got a little bit of but she assimilated to their wants and desires just to be included. And I feel like I am probably the only one out of the whole goddamn collective that is my genetic DNA that said, you know what, I don't really feel like doing this shit, and I don't. And my grandmother, before I left town, and I'm being terribly transparent right now, she says to me, you just don't like to listen. You don't listen to anybody. She respected me. They respected that I had the gift. They respected that, you know what I'm saying? But she expressed that she was fearful for me because I just lacked that capacity to assimilate, basically, in lack of better words. But she fucked with me. She supported me. She helped me. But she was they're afraid of me. And it's not because I've done anything. It's because I don't care. And they care, and I feel like them caring too much has caused them to be miserable in their own personal lives, and they're wondering, why won't you assimilate? Why won't you marry into and just be this good wife, triad wife, and raise your 2 kids with your dog? And it just always felt uncomfortable for me. If I get married again, and I have been married, they did sell me off. I feel like I would want to marry somebody who accepted me 150%. And if they didn't, then I would not want to be anywhere near them, because that is so fucking dangerous. Okay. But my mother is tortured. I think I would compare her to Klaus in is it Klaus? In the Umbrella Academy. The one who's very tortured by the fact that they can see dead people and see when people are dying and stuff. And so to mask that and help them, they utilize other substances to mask that. And I've always thought of her that way, and me and her have had talks about that. And again, I felt like I had a kindred spirit in her, but her kindred spirit turned into jealousy and envy. And if you've heard me speak about that, you know how dangerous that can be. Very, very dangerous. So Anyway, so the issues of the exiled wildish woman are usually twofold: inner and personal, and outer and cultural. Very true. For when one develops adequate strength, not perfect strength, but moderate and serviceable strength in being oneself and finding what one belongs to, one can then influence the outer community and the cultural consciousness in masterful ways. What is moderate strength? It is when the internal mother who mothers you isn't 100% confident about what to do next. 75% confident will do nicely. 75% is a goodly amount. Remember, we say that a flower is blooming, whether it is in half, three quarters, or full bloom. I feel like I don't hate, or I'm not angry with my maternal figure like she probably feels like I am, but I just feel like she's dangerous for me. And she's dangerous because she has allowed her envy and her jealousy for not being able to be her true nature build into this hatred for me. And she will work with or against me with other people because she feels like that's what she's supposed to do. And, why won't you assimilate? Why won't you just sit down and be a good wife? Why don't you just sit down and be a good normal mother? Put your children in normal school and just assimilate. But that's not everybody's path. And people, like I saw a creator on TikTok, she was like, when you stand in your true authenticity, that intimidate people, that angers people. People don't like that shit, especially when they don't have the ability to be themselves. And they like, damn, how dare you, And I feel like that's the point that me and her got at. And I tried for so long to preserve and nurture that relationship until I just couldn't anymore. Like, she just got to be so hateful and so spiteful that I couldn't fuck with her no more. It was beyond narcissism. Like, people be talking about narcissistic parents. It was beyond narcissism. It was hateful. It was cruel. It was being, and at a time I had to realize it was me being cruel to myself to continue to deal with her. Now, again, my grandmother, she's probably more of a covert. So even if she didn't agree with me totally, she never disrespected me. And people be wondering, my grandma can be brutal, but me and her just always had a different relationship. And if she didn't agree with me, she just never disrespected me, even about my lovers or etc. She would say, but she just didn't get disrespectful with it. She didn't down me. She didn't curse me out. She didn't say awful things to me. If she disagreed, she just disagreed, and you barely talked about it. But my maternal figure, brutal. Katana, flawless fucking victory. She was fucking brutal. And I don't know if that has to do with her being a Sag, or I don't know what her Mercury is, but good God. But the people be like, well, your grandmother is the same way. Why do you not feel that way about Alice? But I'm sorry. Ooh, I just said her name. Oh, but she ain't on social media, so whatever. But I love my grandmother because even if she don't agree with you, she she don't handle you like that. She don't disrespect you. She don't to your face. She's like, okay, all right. But she didn't handle me like that. Never, ever, ever. And that's why I fuck with my granny. If you really want to know, you could disagree with people and not cast them down and dog their ass out. You can respectfully disagree. And that's why I will always hold her in high regard, whether she believes in what I do or not. She never just dogged my ass out. If you really, if any cross listeners are listening, and why do you like her? Because she didn't, not to my face. She gave me the utmost fucking respect every single interaction. And she always supported me. It was always like she wanted to see me do better, even if it was some shit she didn't quite agree with. And everything I tapped into, she supported me. For real. When I was home last, she had me make her this scrub. And although she was kind of fearful, and I could get into things about her, but I won't. Maybe another day, another $1. But she did some things that she feels like I may or may not hold a grudge against her about, but I really don't, because I don't know the backstory of that situation. But she wanted me to make the square, but then like she was afraid. So she was afraid because she felt like I was feeling some type of way, but I really wasn't. Like, I don't know the backstory of that situation. And people do a lot of things when they're scared, you know. So who's to say why she did it? I'll never really know why she did what she did. But my family got a history of doing shit like that, though. Anyway, in-depth psychology, this entire maze is called the mother complex. She talks about the kinds of mothers. It is one of the core aspects of a woman's psyche, and it is important to recognize it's conditioned, strengthening certain aspects, writing some, dismantling others, and beginning over again if necessary. So she talks about the ambivalent mother. So this mother bends to the desires of the village rather than aligning herself with her child. That would be my maternal figure. Well, she a little bit of all. She has gone through phases of these. As I was reading it, I was realizing that about her. I was like, damn, she's this is phases for her. Anyway. So a woman in such environs will often try to mold her daughter so that she acts properly in the outer world, thereby hoping to save her daughter and herself from attack. She used to always do this thing, like before I blocked her on my social media, if I would like speak out of term or I would say something, she just keep it classy. And I hate that shit. I hated it so much, I blocked her. Because she would get under my posts, she would, and like, okay, you know what I'm saying? But like, not so much. Anyway, this is why this is Tribe Talk, because I give like an uncensored version of my thoughts about things, and I get transparent about certain shit. And that's, now that I've like kind of moved forward in my journey, I'm going to be very transparent, more transparent probably than I've ever been to a certain aspect, because everybody ain't meant to know everything. But yeah, she's like, I would go on to say my mother was probably my first bully. Yeah, she was my first bully. Anyway, so one pull is her own desire to be accepted by her village. Another is for self-preservation. The third pull is to respond to the fear that she and her child will be punished, persecuted, or killed by the village. This fear is a normal response to an abnormal threat of psychic or physical violence. The fourth pull is the mother's instinctual love for her child and the preservation of that child. Women have died physically, and spiritually. I think she meant to say physically and spiritually for trying to protect the unsanctioned child, whether it be their art, their lover, their politics, their offspring, or their soul life. At the extreme, women have been hanged, burned, and murdered for defying the village prescriptions and sheltering the unsanctioned child. A mother with a child who is different must have the endurance of Cepheus, the fearsome of the Cyclops, and the tough hide of Caliban to go against a mean-spirited culture. When I had first tapped into spirituality, and I remember sitting in my car talking to her, telling her, and she understood, or at least she pretended to. She would tell me, like, don't talk around them, don't say certain things, don't allow, them. This was before they laced my weed and tried to commit me. She would tell me that, and she would be like, they're listening. You might think they're not listening, but they are. But I do feel like she folded. And she has the gift, but she wanted to make the gift digestible for people who don't even give a fuck about her. So anyway, when a woman has this ambivalent mother constructing her own psyche, she may find herself giving in too easily. She may find herself afraid to take a stand, to demand respect, to assert her right to do it, learn it, live it in her own way. For generations, sadly, the mother who wanted to engender esteem in herself and her offspring needed the very qualities that were expressly forbidden to her: vehemence, fearlessness, and fearsomeness. For a mother to happily raise a child who is slightly or largely different in psyche and soul needs from that mainstream culture. She must have a start on heroic qualities herself. There is almost no way to make oneself ready for this other than to take a deep breath of draft of courage and act. So, terribly transparent moment, and I think y'all heard me mention this before. Like every time a woman from like my grandmother's side decided they gonna dibble and dabble into spirituality, my more square family decides that they were crazy, they will commit them, they will do things to them. So my mother did go through a point in her life where she was very, very spiritual. She was tapping into her gifts, and the first thing they did was commit her. They committed her, they ostracized her, and she's been ostracized ever since. So she spent the greater half of 30 to 40 years trying to please these people and trying to like assimilate, get the degree, have the house, do this, do that. And they still don't fuck with her the way you would think, right? Okay, so yeah, they did. That's why I said this mothering shit for her was like, it's phases. And I recognize that she's human and she's going through things, but she has morphed into some shit that I just can't deal with. Trying to have acceptance and her own self-hatred type deal. And like when she first started, she was very courageous. She tried and they tore her ass down. They tore her down. The community tore her down. Her friends tore her down. Men tore her down. My family tore her down. And she is a former shell of herself now because of it. Now, the collapsed mother, funny that I say that. When a mother collapses psychologically, it means she has lost her sense of herself. She may be a malignantly narcissistic mother who feels entitled to be a child herself. Yep. Obey the rules and kill off your children or else. So let me read it. The sentence before that. While to be forced to make a choice is unthinkable, it is a psychic choice that mothers have been forced to make for eons. Obey the rules and kill off your children or else. A culture that requires harm to one's soul in order to follow the culture's prescriptions is a very sick culture indeed. This culture can be the one a woman lives in, but more damning yet, it can be the one she carries around and complies with within her own mind. When a woman has a collapsing mother construct within her psyche and or her culture, she is wobbly about her worth. Truth. The child, keep burping because I know it's fucking truth. Okay. The child mother or the unmothered mother. A mother must be mothered in mothering her own offspring. Through a woman has an alienated... Oh, hell no. Though a woman has an inalienable spiritual and physical bond with her offspring, in the world of the instinctual wild woman, she does not just suddenly become a fully formed temporal mother all by herself. Every new mother begins as a child mother. A child mother is old enough to have babies and has good instincts in the right direction. But she needs the mothering of an older woman or women who essentially prompt, encourage, and support her in mothering of her children. The older women wear the arcs of instinctual knowing and behavior who can invest the young mothers with the same. Women give this knowledge, this knowing to each other through words, but also by other means. Complicated messages about what and how to be are sent simply through a look, a touch with the palm of the hand, a murmur, or a special kind of I cherish you hug. In this way, the child mother is swept across the threshold into the circle of mature mothers who welcome her with jokes, gifts, and stories. In most parts of industrialized countries today, the young mother broods births and attempts to benefit her offspring all by herself. Sometimes the frail mother is herself a swan who has been raised by ducks. She has not been able to find her true identity soon enough to benefit her offspring. Truth. I'll rant later. The strong mother, the strong child. Rather than disengaging from the mother pause. So, I had a very good upbringing, so I don't want people to take it like, oh, woe is me, because my maternal figure, she talks about it a lot, like, oh, you act like you had such a bad childhood, da-da-da-da. I was well taken care of, and even when my own maternal figure couldn't be present for me, I did have community, I did have tribe, And I did learn things from that tribe, of women in my family. Like I was very fortunate to be able to get the tutelage of, great grandmothers and grandmothers and aunties and, women in my family. However, there is a certain status quo that they go by. And they don't want that, they don't want that. They want you to do a certain something. So they didn't ostracize me for real until I started doing things differently. I didn't get ostracized until that point. But I was well taken care of for the lack of physical, financial. But when it came to developing my spiritual gifts and that part, that's the part where I feel like they failed me. Even they I would even say with the artist way, they failed me in that way, because you could only do certain aspects of art that were respected by them, like architecture or graphic design, or little stuff like that. Like if you were gonna be an artist, you had to be a certain kind of artist type thing. Or if you were gonna do hair or do makeup, I had to do a certain type of hair and a certain type of makeup. And even then, like the idea that I could thrive on my own without being under someone else's paycheck brought out the worst in them. Like I wasn't really supported. Now I ain't gonna say all of them didn't support me, but they did it in their own ways, and it was never outward. Like now looking back, I see it. But in terms of my rearing, I was not neglected. I was very well taken care of. They made sure they did the basics, and you were always fed, housed, whatever. Yeah. So just wanted to say that. My tribe was straight. They were straight as long as I was doing what they wanted me to do. I wasn't a neglected child. Rather than disengaging from the mother, we are seeking a wild and wise mother. We cannot be separate from her. So it's like they don't like the wild woman in my family. They don't like her. Like wolves and other creatures, the soul and spirit are able to thrive on very little, and sometimes from a long time on nothing. Even though the mother somehow falls over, even though she has nothing to offer, the offspring will develop and grow independently and still thrive. That's me. That might be you. Bad company. However, the wrong doors are those that cause you to feel like the outcast all over again. This is the looking for love in all the wrong places response to exile. Yes. Different women choose different kinds of wrong medicine. You will recognize it because it makes your life. Hold out for the right medicine. You will recognize it because it makes your life stronger than weaker. When my great grandmother passed away, and she was the person that actually raised me, when I was in my younger years, and even when I was in my primitive years, I was around my grandmother and my aunts more so than my maternal figure, and that was no fault of her own. She was taking care of a child that was very sick and eventually passed away, and they also didn't do her well in terms of psyche. But my great grandmother, she was so loving, and she always what was interesting about her is she was accepting. And I feel like my other family, they not like that. I don't care what they say, they not fucking they're very stuck up. Sorry guys if you're listening, but you are. So they're very hoity-toity boule. So anyway, but my great grandmother, she welcomed the whole neighborhood. She was, she was a cussing woman. She was a drinking whiskey woman. She was a baseball watching woman. But when I used to stay with her, even I still remember this shit. It would be the wayward souls from the neighborhood that would come sit on her porch. She would babysit the special needs children. And that's probably why, low key, I never really had an aversion to the odd, to the wayward soul. In my chart, it tells you that about me too. But I feel like my rearing, when I was 1, 2, I stayed with her every summer all the way up until I was probably my youngest age, probably 10 or 11, when I started to really go to summer camps. Because they said that I, was becoming too wild, need to come up out the country, and I needed to be socialized with proper cheering. So Yeah, like my great grandmother though, she was very open. She like lots of family reunions, lots of it would be blocks and miles of people that would come to her house before she passed away. She passed away very young. Like my great grandmother passed away in her 50s. So that's pretty young. But yeah, she was very good person. She was a Taurus. So she like community service, like that's her thing. And so when she passed away, my family, like, they're not very together nature. It's very separate now with her gone. And I gravitated to, when I was in my teens, I would gravitate to guys who had bigger families, who were very close with their families. And they had this like tribe type thing that I missed because, when my great grandmother passed away, my family didn't have that anymore. And I found myself gravitating to my paper. I say, damn, I always choose a guy that has a large family, that has lots of brothers and sisters, that has lots of like shit that I was missing. And what was crazy about it is, even though they had these things, they were still missing that essential like part of themselves, like being authentic and not being afraid to stand in their own power. So they would admire me, like they say, when you meet a wild woman or you meet someone that has a certain spark of creativity, like you admire the art from afar, but when you really got to try to deal with the art, you try to control it, you try to tell it what to do. And I feel like that's like what I experienced, and they would feel like outcasts, or they would be the orphans or the outcasts or the, different one in their particular lineage. And I would always gravitate toward them. And it was crazy because it's almost like it was the same energy. They want to be accepted. So they would turn, on me in a way like, oh, you too different. I can't do all that. You know what I'm saying? Or, whatever. But, I had a thing for guys with, like, big families. And I think that definitely came from a place, for sure. Because my own lineage got to be very separate, very just extra with it, very, in that energy. Anyway. So she talks about not looking right. So she says, a duckling had no business in that house, but you see what happens when one is desperate. One goes to the wrong place for the wrong thing. As one of my dear late colleagues used to say, you can't get milk at the ram's house. Truth. And it's not to down nobody, because everybody got their wayward souls and their family lineage. But I definitely ended up in a lot of places that I had no business. But I also feel like sometimes you just got to learn the lesson. But yeah, I ended up somewhere I ain't had no business, man. And some people will use that against you. It is that kind of acting, that kind of ego wish to belong at all costs, that knocks out the wild woman connection to the psyche. Then instead of a vital woman, you have a nice woman who is declawed. Then you have a well-behaved, well-meaning, nervous woman panting to be good. No, it is better, more graceful, and far more soulful to just be what and as you are. Truth. They was talking about this episode, or like this lady was decoding Sex in the City and decoding Carrie Big, and it's so funny because I was like, damn, that's so true. Even from a man that, for lack of better words, my family felt like was beneath me, he still went after someone or that his family felt like was more astute. She's very religious. She's very Christian. She's a super Christian. You know what I'm saying? Even though he's nowhere near that shit. Like, and this is me being totally transparent. He is the least religious person I know. But he did what he felt like his family wanted him to do by deciding that he would extend this woman this offer. And even still in that moment, he's still not committed, because that's not who he is. That's not what he wants. But just like Big, when he got with Natasha in Sex in the City, because Natasha is what looked good, Natasha upped his status But Big was never really that person in the show. It was a good ass Decode because I watched it. I live for Sex and the City. And I was like, damn, that's so true. But I was still an outcast, even around people that my folks saw as somebody beneath me. I didn't say they was beneath me, but my people, they was like, what the fuck? And but they looked at me as beneath them because or not able to be an adequate person for their family member because I'm involved in spirituality, and whether they are wayward drunken souls or whatever the fuck they do, they felt like, oh, well, he better off with somebody that's religious. He better off with a church girl. Even though this is not him, and he fell for that shit, and it's disappointing. But acceptance is key. And while I accept it, I'm being transparent about the fact that it was the same vibes, being exiled, being ostracized for being different, and then him going and choosing someone a la Big to make official that was totally his fucking opposite. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I respect it, but it's like, But yeah, it was one of those instances where I was cool as long as I was doing what they thought that I should do. As long as I was a beauty girl, as long as I was doing what his family thought that I should do and going along to get along, I was fine. The minute I stepped into spirituality and stepped into another side of myself, even though I was like, I had money, even though I was successful in my own right, just like Carrie, it just didn't give the image that they thought, even him, it should give. And I found in moments of conversation with him, he was trying to understand my point. And like I said, he's not a church going type of guy, but he believes in God. But it was like, I don't know about that. And that's not right. And I don't think you should do that. Now imagine me seeing you and all your Jesse before he was a preacherist, and you telling me that my level of spirituality is not correct. Imagine, and yeah, it was another form of exile because I was somewhere that I shouldn't have been. Anyway, frozen feeling, frozen creativity. So then you become cold, as they say. Coldness is the kiss of death to creativity, relationship, life itself. In archetypical psychology, to be cold is to be without feeling. For a human to be frozen means to be purposely be without feeling, especially towards oneself, but also and sometimes even more so towards others. An icy attitude will put out a woman's creative fire. It will inhibit the creative function, truth. So what is the solution? Do as the duckling does. Go ahead, struggle through it, pick up the pen already and put it to the page and stop whining. Right. Pick up the brush and be mean to yourself for a change. Paint. Generally, a thing cannot freeze if it is moving. So move. Keep moving. I agree. The person who might take us out of the ice, who might even psychically free us from our lack of feeling, is not necessarily going to be the one to whom we belong. Yep, I feel that. I felt a kindred spirit, and at the end, okay. Exile is boom. If you have attempted to fit whatever mold and failed to do so, you're probably lucky. You may be in exile of some sort, but you have sheltered your soul. It is worse to stay where one does not belong at all than to wander about lost for a while and looking for the psychic and soulful kinship one requires. Something in the duckling is being tempered, being made strong by this exile. While exile is not a thing to desire for the fun of it, there is an unexpected gain from it. The gifts of exile are many. It takes out weakness by the pounding. It removes whininess, enables acute insight, heightened intuition, grants the power of keen observation and perspective that the insider can never achieve. The wild psyche can endure exile, even though there are negative aspects to it. It makes a woman go on looking, and if she cannot find the culture that encourages her, then she usually decides to construct it herself, and that is good, for if she builds it, others who have been looking for a long time will mysteriously arrive one day enthusiastically proclaiming that they have been looking for this all along. What up, though, tribe? The uncombed cats and cross-eyed hens of the world. When this happens, we see women who are ready to apologize for taking up space. We see women who are afraid to just say no thank you and leave. We see women who listen to someone telling them that they are wrong-headed over and over without understanding that cats don't swim and hens don't dive underwater. If warranted, I might ask my client to assume for a moment that she is a swan who does not realize it. Assume also for a moment that she has been brought up by or is currently surrounded by ducks. But ducks are ducks and swans are swans. So why, if this is all so too true, do women keep trying to bend and fold themselves into shapes that are not theirs? She goes on to talk about it being a deep-seated masochism or malignant dedication to self-destruction or anything of that nature. More often, it is because the woman simply does not know any better. She is unmothered. Then the desire for membership into the uncombed cat and cross-eyed hen club will diminish to nothing. So she says, as soon as you process the information from the clues you've gathered, you will be moving in an intentional manner again. Basically, you come home to yourself. It is interesting to note that among wolves, no matter how sick, no matter how cornered, no matter how alone, afraid, or weakened, the wolf will continue. She will lope even with a broken leg. She will go near others seeking the protection of the pack. She will strenuously outwit, outrun, and outlast whatever is bedeviling her. She will put her all into taking breath after breath. She will drag herself, if necessary, just like the duckling, from place to place till she finds a good place, a healing place, a place for thriving. Because the wild nature persists and prevails, women must persist and prevail. The most important thing is to hold on and hold out for your creative life, for your solitude, for your time to be and do, for your very life. Hold on, for the promise from the wild nature is this: after winter, spring always comes. Love for the soul. Hold out, hold on, do your work. You will find your own way. At the end of the tale, the swan recognizes the duckling as one of her own before he does. That is rather typical of the exiled women. After all that hard wandering, they manage to wander over the frontier into home territory and often don't realize for a time that people's looks have ceased to be disparaging and are more often neutral when they are not admiring and approving. Acceptance of one's own unique beauty, that is the wild soul from which we are made. There is probably no better or more reliable measure of whether a woman has spent time in ugly duckling status at some point or all throughout her life than her inability to digest a sincere compliment. So that is the final work of the exile who finds her own to not only accept one's own individuality, one's specific identity as a certain kind of person, but also to accept one's beauty, the shape of one's soul, and the fact that living close to that wild creature transforms us in all that it touches. Learning from them, we just act in our own true way and do not draw back from or hide our natural beauty. Like the creatures we are, and it is right. For women, this searching and finding is based on the mysterious passion. So, for years, women who carry the mythic life of the wild woman archetype have silently cried, "Why am I so different? Why was I born into such a strange or unresponsive family?" Wherever their lives wanted to burst forth, someone was there to salt the ground so nothing could grow. They felt tortured by all the prescriptions against their natural desires. If they were nature children, they were kept under roofs. If they were scientists, they were told to be mothers. If they wanted to be mothers, they were told they better fit the mold entirely. If they wanted to invent something, they were told to be practical. If they wanted to create, they were told a woman's domestic work is never done. Sometimes they tried to be good according to whichever standards were most popular and didn't realize till later that what they really wanted, how they needed to live. Although the scenarios are endless, one thing remains constant. They were pointed out very early on as different with a negative connotation. In actual fact, they were passionate, individual, inquiring, and in their right, instinctive minds. Your family thinks you're an alien. You have feathers, they have scales. Your idea of a good time in the forest, the wilds, the inner life, and the outer majesty. Their idea of a good time is folding towels. Truth. All you want is love, and all they want is peace. It is a sure sign of wild zygotes in the family if the parents are offended all the time and the children feel as though they can never do anything right. Oh my God. Back into why I had to take my maternal figure. This was the beginning of the end for us, for real, for real. Because I had to take her off because anything that I said that she felt like didn't tie like a cute bow, like she went against that shit. Like she was like, oh no, don't be different, don't look different, no. And it was annoying. Anyway, the unwild want consistency. They want you to be exactly the same today as you were yesterday. They wish you not to change with the days, but to remain as the beginning of steaming time. Unfortunately, the things that matter to them are not cohesive with the things that matter to the wild child. She does not show, the wild woman does not show consistency through uniformity, but rather through her creative life, through her consistent perceptions, quick-sightedness, flexibility, and deftness. I always worry for those who are too well behaved. They often have the faint soul look in their eyes. Something is not right. A healthy soul shines through the persona on most days and blazes through on others. Where there is gross injury, the soul flees. A long time must pass before such a soul will trust enough to return, but it can be accomplished. The retrieval requires several ingredients: naked honesty, stamina, tenderness, sweetness, ventilation of rage, and humor. Combined, these make a song that calls the soul back home. Then she talks about what the soul needs in terms of the psyche. And so she talks about, and y'all hear me say this too, like I don't believe in saying surviving, I believe in thriving. And so she talks about there's yet another issue to be dealt with. Mistaken zygotes learn to be survivors. It is tough to spend years among those who cannot help you flourish. Being able to say that one is a survivor is an accomplishment. For many, the power is in the name itself. And yet comes a time in the individuation process when the threat of trauma is significantly past. Then is the time to go to the next stage after survivorship, to healing and thriving. One can take so much pride in being a survivor that it becomes a hazard to further creative development. Sometimes people are afraid to continue beyond survivor status, for it is just that, a status, a distinguishing mark, a damn straight, bet your buttons, better believe it accomplishment. When a woman insists, I am a survivor over and over, once the time for its usefulness is past, the work ahead is clear. We must loosen the person's clutch on the survivor archetype. Otherwise, nothing else can grow. I liken it to a tough little plant that managed without water, sunlight, nutrients to send out a brave and honorary little leaf anyway, in spite of it all. So it is better to name ourselves names that challenge us to grow as free creatures. That is thriving. That is what was meant for us. El Dia de los Muertos, Day of the Dead, celebrations that can be applied to help women in the transition from surviving to thriving. She talks about the rite of ofrendas, which is basically an altar to those who have passed in life. But she suggests doing this in a way to give an offering to your past self, things that you've like accomplished. Oh, hold on. So to end this up, to be the child survivor beyond its time is to over-identify with an injured archetype. To realize the injury and yet memorialize it also allows thriving to come forth. Thriving is what was meant for us on this earth. Thriving, not just surviving, is our birthright as women. Do not cringe and make yourself small if you are called the black sheep, the maverick, the lone wolf. Those with slow seeing say a nonconformist is a blight on society. But it has been proven over the centuries that being different means standing at the edge, means one is practically guaranteed to make an original contribution, a useful and stunning contribution to her culture. When seeking guidance, don't ever listen to the tiny-hearted. Be kind to them, heap them with blessings, cajole them, but do not follow their advice. If you have ever been called defiant, incurable, forward, cunning, insurgent, unruly, rebellious, you're on the right track. Wild woman is close by. If you have never been called these things, there's yet time. Practice your wild woman, Adele, and again. So that was the end of that chapter. Now, when y'all, to wrap this up, when y'all hear me talk about certain things, even Jesse, even though he's a guy in the show Preacher, he's like a wild card. He's friends with Tulip, he's friends with the vampire, but he's also still a preacher. It gives like Jesus type vibes, like how Jesus was like, people like memorialize Jesus in this way, like he was some perfect being, when in reality Jesus was definitely this person that could care less about like the status quo. He was with the wayward soul. He was in the trenches with the Grinches. And in that way, maybe it was a double-edged sword, but I'm taking more from that to be like, most of the time when you find these people, they're not like in this pristine environment. It's rare. It's rare, darling. And a lot of people don't like to get their hands dirty, when they are giving this testimony or this like thought process themselves. And that's I don't criticize nobody, because a lot of times people just don't want to tell that part of their story. They're not comfortable. Maybe that's not they part. That's not their journey in this lifetime. So I don't criticize it, but I also don't stand for the criticism of people who are comfortable with not looking pitch perfect, and people who are comfortable with being, different. So, as much as we can learn from them, I feel like they can learn from us too, right? But yeah, my overall experience in being exiled in a way of like, and I to the point like I don't even give a fuck, because it's like I don't care to be a part of those groups. I don't want to be overly boule to the point where I'm denying myself a life that my elevated ancestors would be proud of, because no one is taking on the gift. They just abandon that shit, and that's a disgrace. And I'm also, in terms of my lovers or ex-lovers or whatever, I also don't desire to be a part of those groups, because I'm not going to pretend to be something that I'm not to reach a certain status that I'm going to have regardless. You know what I'm saying? Like, so I'm not there either. You feel me? I have nothing to pretend. I have nothing to emulate, and I'm going to be my true self no matter what. And if that bothers people, then that's their problem, not mine. I'm not, obnoxious about it. I just really, if you know me, I be to myself, I be chilling. So if you come in my arena with that bullshit, then yeah, I'm going to tell you about it. When my ex was questioning me about hoodoo, I politely sent him articles and let him know that hoodoo came from the church, and people did such things, etc., etc. And while he didn't quite argue after that, his actions proved that he still didn't fucking get it. And I had to realize, like, it's not my job. Like, I did my part, and I've lived many lives in these 38 years, and I've been successful in business. I did the status quo. I graduated high school. I was in clubs, and I was, advanced diploma, and I did everything, and I still didn't get a level of respect, because I was always different no matter what. So I say, fuck it, I might as well do what the fuck I want to do, because y'all don't, y'all don't respect it either motherfucking way. And that's just me being all the way real. That's the lesson for whoever listening. If you meant to be, if you stick out like a sore thumb, then that's just what it is. You might as well do what the fuck you want to do. You might as well live in your truth, because they gonna judge you regardless. They gonna feel you gonna always be doing it wrong to somebody. Like, I would have felt like I was more respected and stuff like that within my family unit, but I wasn't, because I didn't work for anybody. It's like it bothered them or some shit. It was weird. Confirmation. I made money. Like, I was able to, despite life's whatever throwing at me, I was able to be substantial. I had certain shit happen that kind of kept me in a cycle of having to learn the lesson to stop going where I don't fit. But the foundation of it all, I was able to build a business that was sustaining itself, was employing other people, and was normal, for lack of better words. And I still got the least amount of support. So I don't feel at all weird about the fact that they don't support this spiritual team that I'm doing, because they never really tapped in like that for real anyway, whether it be jealousy, outright ostracizing me, or exiling me, whatever you want to put it. Like, I always was like so why am I why would I be doing that? And I would give advice to the collective, like, don't, be you. Do you, be you, for you. And if you definitely are raising children in that climate, don't be bullied into fitting the status quo so that it makes other people uncomfortable, because all you're doing is raising children that are later on going to come back how we had to come back and try to find themselves again, when all along they were meant to be different. They were not meant to do it the way that everybody else did it. Everybody's not meant to color inside the lines. And I've experienced it from the bottom to the top, that people want acceptance no matter what they got to do to fucking get it. And then there are those of us who just don't give a fuck. Congratulations. Welcome to the tribe. But yeah, y'all, that's my analysis. I need to do this hoodoo almanac for today. And I hope while I'm doing this, you enjoy this episode. That's my call for y'all, for myself. Transparent as fuck after reading that chapter. And I can't be fake. So when I do run across some shit in a book or a movie or whatever, so I'm going to guide it. I'm going to speak on this shit because I'm not dying to be relatable. But when points where I am able to connect and be like, all right, yeah, I feel you on this shit. I feel you. So if you out here and you forging a new path and people don't get it, your lovers don't get it, your ex-lovers don't get it, your family doesn't get it, you're not alone in this shit. I totally get you. And the point is to keep going, because how would life be created if we were all the fucking same? I'm sure when Thomas Edison decided, they say he stole that idea though. Is that true? I might be overstepping. But I'm sure when people created certain things, when they decided they was going to fly the first plane, motherfuckers was probably like, oh, that's weird. You can't fly a plane. And now look at shit, traveling all over the world in planes. So yeah, don't succumb. When you feel awkward and you feel like you don't fit, don't succumb. And in terms of healing the mother wound, you can't do that shit if you don't acknowledge that something is wrong. So please don't take this as I humanize, I don't idolize my maternal figure. I see her points where life handed her a bum deal, but I still have to acknowledge this shit that catalyzed our relationship, or lack thereof. You feel me? Because it has put a little twinge on, my mothering and how I try to come through, and I'm not always perfect, but I damn sure do try, So I think you can't heal the wound if you don't acknowledge it, So yeah, that's my jizz, y'all. Feel me? I love you guys. I pray this message helps someone out. Pick up Women Who Run With Wolves. I think it's on my Amazon list, and tap back in with me, y'all, to the artist way. I'm back on road. I'm back on my Zoom. So I'll be working on that as well. Okay, y'all. Hit that share or follow or subscribe button if you feel me. All right? Bye.